Indiana Sportsbeat Radio, brought to you by the Hard Truth Distilling Company in Brown County, Indiana.
So for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, it's time!
3 on the way. Oh! It went in! It went in! And Indiana wins the ball game!
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Float game for the win! Ayla's gone. Goodbye. Touchdown, Indy. Woo! IU America. They got a football team now.
It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
You know that I'm the cream of the crop.
Now, from the Hard Truth Studios, here's Jim Coyle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome aboard to another edition of Indiana Sportsbeat Radio on this Friday. Todd Leary with us to start things off, and who gives a fuck, right? Just messing with you. Look at that look. We're not on radio today. It's just YouTube only. So I just wanted to see the expression on your face. I've been wanting to do that. I've been thinking about that. No, but welcome aboard, and Big Ten tournament well underway, as is all of the others. You've been able to catch much of it?
First of all, you know better than to give me a license to say whatever I want. Second of all, yeah, look at how tired I look. I was up watching tournament week, Big Ten tournament week, or I guess all conference tournament weeks. I stay up way later than I normally do. So, yeah, I watched almost all of it yesterday.
Yeah, and it was a long day, of course, starting off with Oregon, Indiana, which did not go the way Indiana fans would like to see, but it was a chalk day. Every team that was supposed to win won. Oregon beat Indiana. Wisconsin beat Northwestern. Illinois beat Iowa, and Purdue beat USC. So it's pretty much what you would expect. Now we move into the bigger games, baby. The big boys play, but before we get to that, I thought Indiana might sneak in as the last team in, but a lot of indications now is, whoop, you're out.
Yeah, I'm surprised by that, because I kind of thought that Ohio State game on senior day was kind of a play-in game, and I thought one of those teams would get in for sure. I think North Carolina winning yesterday hurt. Texas winning yesterday hurt Indiana's chances. But, I don't know. Like, I'm surprised by those projections, because I still thought that they would be in. And so I'm just not letting myself believe it or not. But, yeah, that would definitely stink if that game knocked them out.
Well, and then the next question comes, do they go to the Crown Tournament, which is the one out in Las Vegas? A lot of people, I don't think so either, but
nope. You're
supposed to be required to play in it if you're the first two available teams, which would be Indiana and Ohio State. But I think Indiana might ask for a waiver to not play in it because of the coaching situation. Because if you're going to play in the NCAA tournament, why wouldn't you play in the Crown? But it will be interesting to see. The Crown's out in Las Vegas. And maybe I'm wrong. I mean, maybe the players would want to do it. Maybe. Well, I don't think so. I agree with you, but I think we'll have to ask
why that's probably not the case is because there's now, with the way college basketball is, there's probably money involved. They probably get
absolutely
paid to go play in it. So yeah, they probably I take that back. They probably would want to go play in it, because I'm assuming, or I'm probably educated guessing, that there's money involved in it. So yeah, you would take a free trip out to Vegas and go play some more basketball games. And, it's just, if it's not the NCAA, I've always felt this way about the NIT. I mean, if it's not the NCAA tournament, I don't care. Like, I'm not going to sweat whether they win or lose any games out there. And then what do coaches do? Do they play weird lineups? In this case, in the past, coaches would probably use it to maybe play their younger guys or guys who didn't get as much playing time to see what they've got coming back for next year. But that's obviously, one, not going to be the case with IU, but two, it's not the case in all of college basketball, because most guys are going to hit the transfer portal the second they have the opportunity, just to test the market and see what's out there.
I'm not. Are your bookshelves sagging? Am I missing something?
Is it? I don't know.
I don't know either.
but I'm in for the GoFundMe. I'll take the GoFundMe page, but I don't know what you want me to do with my.
Matt wants to suggest that we get Todd a new bookshelf.
I like it.
Yeah, I'm trying to look to see if it's sagging or something.
Bookshelf.
I don't see.
I'm a fan of my bookshelf.
I
like to show off all the books that I haven't read.
You have not read.
Yeah.
Yes. Todd Tanis says he's having been a back of house kitchen employee for 30 plus years. He paid in blood, sweat, and tears to earn that license to say what he is feeling and thinking. There you go, brother. Have at it. Brad, like to see you on here as well, but they should be out, and probably they never deserve to actually be in the tournament. I don't think if this were a normal year, it's a very, very, very soft and even softer yet bubble right now. And yeah, they wouldn't be in a normal year. I mean, what are they, 18 and 14?
I don't know. I mean, the way the season started, totally agree with you, all the way up through, then they winning at Michigan State. I mean, honestly, that might be the one that maybe gets them in. If they get in, I think that road win, because you're talking about a team that, if Michigan State can get to the finals of the Big Ten tournament, I mean, they're probably going to be a 2 seed, maybe a 3 seed. But I mean, and you beat that team on the road at their place when they were playing well. So I don't know. I don't disagree with any of those comments. I don't think that they've played well enough to get in. I think there's probably the 14th team in the SEC has played better than Indiana has. And so, I mean, I don't think that they've done enough to get in, but the way things were playing out, it certainly looked like they were going to. And now at this point, I think I'd be surprised if they didn't get in.
Brad says it was great to see Todd working with Trent yesterday. Did I miss something?
Yeah, I went down and worked with. He's home for spring break, so I went down and worked with him a little bit. And I mean, heck, he's playing great. He's shooting great. I was hoping to just maybe make sure that he's still solid about Indiana, which he is. He's 100% in on Indiana,
oh, yeah.
no matter who the coach is going to be. And so that's a great feeling. This is one of those kids that you have to have, that you want to have. Like, I mean, Trent Sisley is a winner. He wants to win. His number one goal in everything he does is winning. It's not stats. And, that's kind of rare in today's climate of basketball. So, I was, his dad, Matt, asked me to come down yesterday, or, we kind of talked about it, and he didn't ask me. I pretty much begged to go down there and play with him and work with him a little bit. So yeah, it was a good day. It was fun. And, he's going to be really good in an Indiana uniform.
Yeah, I saw him at the last home game along with his mom, Heather, and dad, Matt. And I believe his sister was there too. But yeah, he was home, and they're waiting to hope to see if they get into the national finals tournament. I don't know if that's been decided yet or not. I haven't heard an update. I know they were waiting the last I heard. Montverde.
Is that the one that's at HSE?
Yeah. So
well, I think that they're in. I'm pretty sure that they're in. So yeah,
that's great to hear. Then, yep. So Matt will get, or Trent rather, will get a last opportunity to play in Indiana, which is kind of wild to think that he'll get to wrap his career up after going to Florida. So good luck to him. And yeah, I agree with you. I've talked about it on the show. He is the type of player that Indiana needs, especially right now in this coaching change.
Yep.
This could not be better for whomever the new coach is going to be than to have a Trent Sisley waiting for him. It's not that he's going to, be Michael Jordan next year for him, but he's going to be an all-around player, a player that you can count on, a player that's going to be here probably for 3 or 4 years, and someone who wants to be at Indiana. So, like you said, those things rare today.
Well, I always say this, and kids, kids fall into a bunch of different categories. but every single player falls into one of two categories. And I've said this for years. A player either feels like the school is lucky that they are choosing that school, or the player feels like they are lucky that the school is choosing them. Now, you fall in a bunch of other categories, but everyone falls in one of those two because the player either feels one way or the other. And Trent Sisley is definitely one of those guys that feels like he's lucky to be able to go and play at Indiana University. And in 2025 climate of college basketball, that is extremely rare. So, yeah, he is definitely one of those players that, you do anything you can, you covet, you do anything that you can to make them feel great and welcome. And I certainly hope, and I know the fan base will love him and enjoy watching his career at Indiana.
Absolutely. A good point by Regan. The Crown doesn't start until March 31st. Holy cow. See, there's another. I think that Scott Dolson, if he can, will not like to have his team playing in that, because I'm pretty certain he's pretty far along in his coaching search, as in he probably now I think that they have to be where they're going to be.
Yeah, but let's play this scenario out. Let's say they lucked out and the coach that becomes the next Indiana coach is hired prior to March 31st. That would give that coach an opportunity to maybe coach Rice and Renew and some of those guys who are most likely going to hit the portal, and give them an opportunity to show them what they could be and what their system is going to look like and all that. It most likely won't happen that way. I'm guessing it might not. But if Indiana did have a coach prior to the 31st, I might change my mind on it and say that they should go play in it.
Yeah, well, we'll certainly see. Carl says, with so many possible coaches falling out of contention, does Todd still think IU is very desirable? Well, I don't know how many have really fallen out of contention. Brad Stevens was never in contention. Dusty May was.
We put him in. We put Brad Stevens in contention in our minds, and so yeah. I mean, I agree with that side of it. I just, the job is. I don't understand what people are saying when they're saying that some coaches might not want the job. Unless a coach is at his final destination, this is one of the top jobs in the country. I know their team has not been very good. I know that they have not been successful. I agree with all of that. That doesn't change the fact that Indiana has all the tools that it takes to get to that point. They've got all the NIL money. They pay the coach more than market. So yeah, it's a coveted job, no question about it. Most coaches are going to want this job. Don't worry about all the stuff that goes along with it. They have that at almost every school. You talk about the fan base and death threats and all that. I mean, you've heard that from every other school. Players at every school tell you the stuff like that. So yeah, it's that's just an unfortunate part of where we're at today.
Absolutely. It's a top destination.
Where am I going? Cheryl's got me pumped up today. Let's do it.
Go on, baby. Go. Roll Tide. Go Tide. Yes, Andrew Sisley does have the right attitude, and no one knows that better than Todd, who has been coaching with him. But yes, certainly he's just from a great family, great basketball family.
Solid as can be. Yeah, they're just salt of the earth people. And that's what it's just fun to be around people like that. I jumped at the opportunity to go down there when he was home for spring break yesterday and work with him because I just like being around him. He's a good kid. He wants to win. And like I said, that's pretty rare. So yeah, I couldn't be more excited. I know Indiana fans, they might love him now. They're really going to love him once he gets there.
Ed was down at Montverde a couple of weeks ago. Good for you. Brad says, what's sad is they're debating Indiana getting in. They should be debating what seed Indiana is going to be. Well, that's where it should be. Yes, I agree with you. Indiana should be an NCAA tournament team every year. That should be the bottom, the absolute bottom. What seed you're going to be should be the question. And hopefully the right coach can get them back to that. And right. Now that debate is going to rage on. It will rage on even after this new coach is named, because whoever it is there's going to be a faction of people who are just not happy. And I can see that because every time I throw out a name, and I promise you there will be no,
right,
I don't want him.
For sure.
I don't want him.
For sure. Hey, I really enjoy hearing people's opinions on who they want, who they think it'll be, all those things. Dream people. But it's a scenario that we all have different opinions, and we all think certain people will be successful. At the end of the day, we want a program that's run well and is organized and wins and brings in players that you want to root for and want them to play hard. And so, I mean, we want them all to play hard. I'm over speaking there, but we have to support whoever it's going to be. Look, there's people that I think have a very good chance of becoming the coach that I wouldn't be that excited about. I'll be honest with you. I wasn't that excited about Mike Woodson. And I only mean that because he didn't have a record to be excited about in college basketball. Now, I grew up a huge Indiana fan, so I loved Mike Woodson as a player. But as a coach, I just sat back and said, hey, you know what? I'm going to support it no matter what. Him being the coach, Dolson told me that was a good hire and that was going to be a good hire. And, I think for the most part, most people gave this situation a chance and an opportunity. And it didn't pan out the way that we all wanted. So this next one's got to – we've said this. You go back and listen to our shows, Jim, over the years. We've said every time, this one has to work. This coach has to work. It just keeps not working. So, yeah, this is an important hire for sure.
John M., good morning to you, my friend. Appreciate you being here with us. I'm wondering, too, if they still play in it, but Woodson doesn't coach in it. There's that possibility I never thought of. He's not doing any of the stuff with Don Fisher. So if
right.
he can ignore him, so why not just not coach the game? I don't know.
Indiana falls into, that tournament being in its first year. It's a little different anyway. So I don't know. I have mixed emotions about it. And I don't know whether I think he should coach or shouldn't coach. I don't know whether I think he would want to coach or not want to coach. I'm just really not super sure about how I think it should play out.
Now, Ed says that Northwestern has already declined in playing postseason tournaments. I don't know. I haven't seen that. So that's
news to me, but don't disagree with the, look.
But why would Northwestern decline?
My guess is because, one, they dealt with tons of injuries. Brooks Barnheiser being out for the season. And, look, Nick Martinelli, their leading scorer and, one of the better players in the Big Ten, had just an unbelievable season this year. I mean, he's going to hit the transfer portal. And if he doesn't, I'll be shocked because he's going to bring huge money. And Northwestern just can't afford to pay that. So,
speaking of Northwestern, I have been throwing the name out, Chris Collins, as a potential candidate, which he is potential. Everybody's potential. Hell, I'm potential. You're
Until
potential.
They say they're not, they're potential. Yeah.
Right. But he's, to me, viable. I'm not saying he's the second coming, but he's a pretty damn good coach. And he's had, a decent run at Northwestern where you have no resources, where it's hard to recruit guys to. It's hard to get the elite talent. You can't hardly get elite talent at Northwestern. It's very tough. He's taken them to their first NCAA tournaments ever. So he's a pretty decent coach. I think he would be successful in Indiana. I'm not saying he should be the guy, but he is a name that has to be looked at.
I don't disagree with you. I mean, you can sit here. I could sit here and I could give you reasons why I think he had have a real good chance of being successful, and I could give you reasons why I'm not really sure he would be successful or not. Because
let's hear some of both of those. That's
okay. So yeah, you're right. He has accomplished a lot with limited resources. So given maximum resources or all the resources he could possibly want, I think we don't know what his potential could be at that. But on the flip side of that, I think you said it, and I think this is the feeling of a lot of people. Yes, you're right. I think he's a pretty darn good coach. I think the coach at Indiana should be elite coach. The coach at Indiana should be, super elite. And I agree with you. I think Chris Collins has proven that he can definitely coach. He is a guy that, has accomplished a lot with limited resources. And Northwestern, I've always said Northwestern's kind of the Ivy League school of the Big Ten, which puts them in a tough spot because you saw, if you look at Yale last year, I'm going to use them because of how difficult it is to get into that school and what a academic place it is. And they had, Danny Wolf that plays at Michigan now, and they had, I think the kid is Noling is his last name, that played at USC, really good player this year. So those guys all transferred out of Yale. And I mean, they did that because the opportunity to make the money and go play in big time games. And, that is what, I think Chris Collins has fought a little bit of that with Northwestern. It's a difficult school academically, and they don't have the NIL budget that, I don't know where they rank out of 18 teams in the Big Ten, an NIL budget, but I bet it's in the bottom 3 or 4, if not the bottom 1. So, yeah, Chris Collins is a name that I think you look at. I agree with you. I don't necessarily know that I would put him as a front runner.
Where did the guy that played for Tennessee last year, a great shooter, went to the NBA?
Dalton Connect?
Yes. Didn't he come from the Ivy League?
I don't think so.
Prior to Tennessee, I can't remember.
I can't remember where. I think he came from a Division II.
Wow.
Yeah, I can't. But I don't think he came from Ivy League school.
Regional weekend.
Well, Seymour, that's always a fun gym to go watch games in the tournament.
But you know what? They have Jeffersonville playing, I don't know where, Southport, down someplace else. The Seymour Regional this year is like 1- and 2A schools or something.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah, it's weird.
I didn't know that.
I'm like, wow, that's a change. So, but yeah,
great. I remember going down there and watching Romeo play in
their
tournaments down there. That's a fun gym to go to, and it got packed. It was. I remember watching Floyd Central in New Albany down there, and that was a fun atmosphere.
Yep. I think they're Zach Zeed says, I think we are in now. Jim thought Texas could put us out after their double overtime win yesterday. I don't think that Indiana's in, Zach.
Yeah, Lenardi was pretty blatant at saying if Texas wins, Indiana's out. With North Carolina winning, Texas winning, I mean, that hurts. There's no question about it. But I still think, it's gonna come down to some of the smaller tournaments. And, is there a situation like in North Carolina State last year? We all say the same thing. We all sit there and say, oh, this team's not going to make a run. Auburn's going to win the SEC, and if they don't, it'll be Alabama or somebody like that. You never know. I mean, a team like Texas could sweep through that thing. You never know. North Carolina gets to play Duke today, and Duke without Cooper Flagg, North Carolina probably win again today.
Oh my! I didn't forgot about that.
Yeah, Cooper Flagg's. I mean, he'll be lucky to be able to play next weekend. Like, they might need to get to the Sweet 16 before he's able to play, because that roll of the ankle, some of them are worse than others, and that one looked like one of the bad ones.
That just gives me just thinking about it. If you've ever had it, that feeling.
That numb feeling that doesn't stay numb for too long.
Boy, I can just feel my ankle turning under right now.
I know it.
All right, getting back to the coaching searches, Ben McCollum, another name that is really bouncing up to the top. A lot of people like him. A lot of people don't like him.
Sure.
Just like everybody else. They, out of 352 Division I teams, they play the slowest pace of all of them. So you would see a Virginia, old school Wisconsin-esque type of play, but both of those teams won.
That job is probably going to be open. So wouldn't that be just an absolute perfect fit to send him to Virginia? Like, I don't disagree. If you watch Drake play, they are as fundamental and disciplined as it gets. Like they control the game. They control the pace of the game. Well, they certainly try to, and they're good at it. And so if they get ahead of you, they have a lead in the game, you have a very tough time beating Drake. And so, he's a guy that has a system, and his players understand the system, and they run it really well. And so he's done that in 1 year of being at Drake. Now, granted, they had some good players there already, but he brought some players with him from Division II level where he came from. And
those have been their best players, actually.
Sure. Well, look, the Sturts kid, I think is his name.
Yes, he was a player of the year. He was second team all conference in Division II and comes to Division I and is the player of the year. So, amazing situation. But that tells you the depth of college basketball in general. Like the difference between Division I and Division II is a small gap. And I think it's getting smaller all the time. Does the style McCollum plays transfer to Big Ten basketball, to upper level basketball? Because you would have better players in those situations. But does that style translate, or do you think there would be some augmentation?
I mean, I don't think he's going to walk. It's my opinion. I don't think it's. I think it's a system that in the Big Ten could work, yes. I think it's a lot like Wisconsin used to be, not the Wisconsin we know now. But, it was kind of that, just control the pace of play. You end a game with 6 turnovers because you didn't have any fast break points. and you win at the free throw line, and all your players shoot 80% from the free throw line. Because once you're ahead at the end of a game, you're not losing. And so, I think it translates to any level or any conference. Here's the difficulty with it today. Today's basketball is a little different than, the old Virginia teams and Wisconsin teams. And you even saw, Wisconsin's totally changed their way they play. I mean, they play fast now. And I think the reason they do that is because it's easier to recruit. It's easier to get guys that want to come in and play fast and score a lot of points versus – the third leading scorer on Drake, I'm making this up because I do not know, but the third leading scorer on Drake, I bet doesn't average double digits. I mean, I bet you they have one player that averaged double digits, maybe 2 at most, and the leading scorer probably doesn't average 15. So it's just not a style of play you're going to get the top 25 to 50 players in the country to even take a look at. So that to me is a hurdle that McCollum would have. Again, I only know him from studying him in the last 2-3 months. Like I haven't followed him close enough to know over the years. Like take a Bruce Pearl, for example. I can tell you a lot about Bruce Pearl because I watched him at Tennessee and I watched him at Auburn, and I can tell you a lot about a lot of different coaches that are on TV more often than that are in conferences that we watch more often.
That's Gritty's pick. She would like to see Bruce. I don't think that's an option, but we'll certainly see.
Why do you say that?
I don't know that. I really don't. When you have the number 1 team in the country, it's kind of hard to get him away from there, but he would certainly love to have it. I don't know that Indiana would go after him, but he's got a little bit of baggage, and Indiana seems to be pretty hands off to baggage, which really limits them. That eliminates Will Wade, who made strong ass offers. And so I don't think he's going to get a strong ass consideration for the job, although he's a great coach. And I think that Christian Watford shot out give him a shout out that he'd like to see Will Wade as coach. But didn't he coach his brother?
So, I think so at LSU.
Yeah. So where he got caught cheating and fired. So that's not going to
work. But what he got caught doing is legal now. So, it's like the whole Kelvin Sampson thing. Like, when he got in trouble, he brought some baggage with him and Indiana hired him. It didn't work out great, but it also wasn't the worst thing in the world. Look, I in this coaching search, I promise you, I'm going to be open-minded about it. I have some people that I would really like to see. Will Wade would not disappoint me in the slightest. A guy wins, and he's young. He's a guy that could be there for many, many years. Chris Beard has some baggage. He wins. He could be here for many, many years. I just think that there's a bunch of guys that we need to be open-minded to. McCollum doesn't play a style that I enjoy watching all that much. He puts a good product on the floor that isn't going to get you. I think he's a safe hire. I think McCollum is a safer hire than some other people. I don't think he's as sexy as hire as some of the other guys could be. But this is where I disagree with you a little bit on the people like Bruce Pearl, because Bruce Pearl's at a football school. End of the day, no question about it. Auburn, Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, football schools. So Bruce Pearl lived in the state of Indiana. He knows that. He knows what Indiana's about. And I don't care how good the football program is, which I love the fact that they're great. Going to come across negative, like I'm saying I don't care about football. I love the Indiana football this year was so much fun. It was crazy. But Indiana's a basketball school, and that's not going to change. They could win 5 football championships in a row. It's still a basketball school. Thank you to Coach Branch McCracken and Bob Knight, but it's a basketball school. North Carolina, always going to be a basketball school. Kentucky, always going to be a basketball school. Alabama, always going to be a football school. Auburn is a place I do think Bruce Pearl would want to come to. I disagree with you there.
Well, I think he would. I don't disagree that he would want to. I just don't know with where he is, if he would make the move. I'm not saying he wouldn't if they were able to get him. I haven't looked up his buyout, and I don't recall what it is, so I don't know what that situation is like. But it would be interesting, and I know that fans would be fine with that. They would be very happy. How could you not be?
Some people would hate it, though. You're totally right. Some people would hate it. With social media today, we learn, like everybody's always had opinions. We just get to learn people's opinions sooner and faster and more often now with social media. And it does not matter who is hired. If it was Brad Stevens, some people are going to not like it. And they're going to have a reason why they don't like it. And that's their right to be able to have that opinion.
Yeah, and so, all right, who's next on the list of potentials that you think are really a potential candidate that we?
I think Brad Brownell at Clemson is a more serious candidate than. I mean,
really,
there are some people I brought that name up to that don't even know who he is. They don't follow Clemson. They don't follow the ACC. They don't know a lot about him. They don't know he's from Indiana, And he's plucked players out of Indiana to go to Clemson. So it's not like he's written Indiana off. And so I'm not saying he's a front runner. I'm not saying I know any inside information. I'm saying I think he's a name that doesn't get thrown around by the average fan as much as I think it might get talked about in Indiana.
Who's your favorite pick? I know I've got to let you go. So
I mean, I've been saying, and you know who I'm going to say because I've been saying this for years now, but I would like to see Chris Beard. I would also like to see Bruce Pearl. I'd love to see Brad Stevens. I mean, if you're going to ask me who I want, I'm going to stick to the guys at the top. Dusty May. Who do I think? I think it'll be Mick Cronin.
I would not be surprised by that at all.
I wouldn't either. Here's what I know about Mick Cronin, which is not a lot, but here's what I know about him. I know he checks all of the boxes that you need checked. And as far as I know, and from everyone that I have talked to, there's no baggage. There's nothing that you say, yeah, all of these things, but. So, the only buts I've heard are people don't like him. He's grouchy. And when I say don't like him, I just think he's grouchy.
I think he's pretty serious about what he does, and that sometimes comes across as whatever.
I don't know
But
where he's from originally, but he comes across with an East Coast attitude.
yeah, let me tell you,
Like
if he's
New
winning,
York attitude.
they'd get to liking him quickly if he won a lot of games.
You know how you cure being grumpy? When you're winning, you're not grumpy. I mean, you are, but you don't show it like you're grumpy like he does now in press conferences.
Yeah, I think he'll learn that. He's just tired of the season, maybe. But, brother, I appreciate you as always. I know we got to get you off here, so head out to your day. Enjoy the beautiful weather.
No, man, I'm enjoying the basketball games. But, yes, I am enjoying the weather also. I should be hitting golf balls, but too much basketball on today.
Yeah, that would be nice. But enjoy it, brother. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next week, I guess.
Can't wait.
Todd Leary joining us here on Indiana Sportsbeat Radio. See, we don't even have to take breaks today, which is awesome. Zach should be joining us here in a moment. Zach Osterman from the Indy Star will get his viewpoints on some things as the season is wrapping up for Indiana. It looks like they're most likely out of the tournament. Zach Osterman from the Indy Star, the beat writer, the IU Insider, joins us now. Make sure you keep local papers alive. Be a subscriber. Give Zach a follow. Zachary, I thought Indiana was going to make it in, but it appears because of some of the late games yesterday, the teams that won, they may be pushed out now.
Yeah, I mean they're certainly in. They are certainly, I think, at best going to be sweating some of this, and I think that the two that I would look at most closely that are still alive in their conference tournaments among bubble teams are probably Texas and Colorado State, maybe Boise State too. Actually, maybe make that three. But then you also have, the potential for a bid thief. Dayton, for example, could make a run in the A-10 tournament. You've got the Big West where, UC San Diego might have an argument for an at-large berth if it doesn't make it into the tournament as the conference champion. That's not a conference that tends to produce, so it tends to be a multi-bid league. But I guess for people who, and we don't need to get too in the weeds with this, but for people who may not know, UC San Diego has just had like a crazy good season. Eric Golden, the coach out there, actually is someone who's been mentioned to me very, very sort of like sparingly as someone Indiana should take a look at. And I haven't looked too much into him, but I mean, this is like this is a program that historically speaking, I think they've only been in Division I for like 5 years. I think that's right. And they are 28-4. They're in the top, I think 30 or the top 48 rather in Ken Palm. They're in a conference with UC Irvine, which is 27-5, but probably doesn't have necessarily quite the resume that UC San Diego does. The point is, the Big West is historically just a one big league, and this year it could be two. My best guess right now is that the likeliest outcome here is Indiana gets bumped out. And that's because of what I think might continue to happen elsewhere. Now, a bunch of other bubble teams also lost yesterday. Arkansas lost, Baylor lost, Xavier lost, Nova lost, Wake Forest lost, SMU. I'm not really sure SMU was in the bubble, but I know they lost as well. So, you at least pared the field down somewhat. And the other thing I would say is what I always say is we don't know exactly how the committee is going to, separate these teams. It always has to look for, sort of points of comparison that it can cast across the entire bubble field to be able to separate them. And those always change a little bit year to year because teams' resumes are a little bit different year to year. And if it winds up, for example, that quality road wins is something that separates, the committee uses to separate these teams, well, then Indiana might have a shot. Because for a bubble team, Indiana's got a surprising number, 3 quad 1 road wins. If it's, something like, quad 2 and 3 records, well, Indiana's perfect outside of quad 1. But if it's, maybe the most fundamental data point of all, which is just how many quality wins do you have? Indiana doesn't have a lot. They've beaten 2 teams that are likely to be in the field. They're 4-13 or 4-14 now, I forget, in quad 1 games. If you're asking me what the likeliest outcome is, I think probably it's them getting bumped out, but we'll see.
Well, and if that is the case, do they play in the Crown Tournament or do they decline? Are they able to decline? Do they request a waiver with the Crown starting later and Indiana being in the midst of a coaching search? If the coach that they are looking to hire becomes freed up by his team losing, I'm sure they're going to want to make that change as soon as possible, and extending Indiana's season may kind of obscure that or interfere with that.
Yeah, I would be very, very surprised if Indiana's season continues outside the NCAA tournament. Last year Indiana made no bones about having no interest in the NIT. I think everybody's still trying to figure out exactly what the CBB Crown is, like in practical terms. I know we know what it is, but like in practical terms, what
the question is
how does the money get split up?
And
but
are you required to play in it? Because
I think, if there was a year certainly to basically ask out of it, from Indiana's perspective, and it's worth saying, CBB Crown is organized entirely by Fox, which does not have any presence in the NCAA tournament space. Fox has no media rights within the NCAA tournament at all. So it's basically just Fox trying to get, I think it's fair to say, a significant number of, pretty good, good brand teams, because it's supposed to be just like the Big 10, the Big East, and the Big 12, I think. So basically Fox affiliated high major conferences, which means name brand, non-NCAA tournament programs, to come out to Vegas, play a short tournament, plaster it all over television, pay everybody a bunch of money to do it, and see if you can't build something that at least not necessarily rivals the NCAA tournament, but at least kind of gives Fox a bit of a foothold in the the men's basketball postseason. But because it's all organized completely by Fox, that means that, if Indiana needs to go to the Big 10 and say, hey, listen, this year of all years, we just really cannot be in that tournament, then it will be very easy for the Big 10, Indiana, and if necessary, Fox, to all get in the same proverbial room together. And again, just have a very frank conversation about Indiana. We are in the middle of a coaching search. Once the season ends, once the coaching hire is made, we have to move so quickly through roster management and rebuilding as quickly as possible. And we're going to have to hit the portal and yada, yada, yada. My point here is, Indiana, I think, has every case for being able to, if it needs to sort of play, the one-time card of, please just don't let us do this year. Don't make us do this year. It can do that. I would just be, and you never say never with anything around this time of year. I would just be very, very surprised.
Yeah, I agree.
If Indiana participates in a postseason that is not the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, there's too much going on, and with the program, and that makes complete and total sense. That's what I was thinking all along. I just didn't know the actual. Wondering about the requirements, since it's the first year we really don't know. But now all eyes will turn to, not that they have left, but the coaching search. I have to think that Scott is where he wants to be as far as knowing his top 4 guys or whatever. And and that process has to probably be pretty far along at this point. And I don't know when an announcement would come. It could come in the second weekend, after the second weekend of the tournament, or after the Final Four, but it's got to come in that range because the portal's opening up. You've got all kinds of things that are happening that are affecting it, wanting to get the new coach named and all of that. There's a lot that has to happen kind of quickly.
Yeah, I mean, he being Scott Dolson, I think you're right. I think he's probably at least in sort of the advanced stages of vetting some specific candidates. I think we're past the point now of, the search firm casting a wide net, doing a lot of background, doing a lot of sort of, casual or surface level conversation with agents and things. I think we're probably at a point where Indiana at least has a good idea of kind of the candidates it wants to focus its attention on here at the end. Does that mean, it's clear, somebody mentioned Ben McCollum a little while ago. Is Ben McCollum the clear number one? I'm not sure it's quite at that point yet in terms of, I'm not sure that Indiana's sort of actively saying it's him. And then if it's not him, then it's him. And then if it's not him, then it's him, and so forth. And these things, never work quite in that such a linear way. So, you also allow for that as well. But, what I would say is that I would, again, if you want to talk about just what I kind of expect, I would be surprised if Indiana does not enter next week with an action plan. And obviously they're not going to share that publicly, but a plan to essentially say whenever target number one season ends, we have all the ducks in a row, everything lined up. The search firm has helped confirm details of potential contracts and things so that we can just sort of snap our fingers and go, and just dive right in. I mean, like I wrote something earlier this week where I looked back at the timelines for last season, and there were 4 jobs that I think were kind of at least loosely connected to Dusty May, who was probably the biggest domino in the coaching carousel last season. Ohio State filled on March 17th. Dusty May's season ended on March 22nd. He was announced as Michigan's head coach on March 24th. Vanderbilt announced Mark Byington the next day, and Pat Kelsey was announced 3 days after that. So, and there was certainly a sense at the time that Ohio State, at very least, was sort of trying to decide between Dusty May and Jake Diebler, and maybe Ohio State decided on Diebler. Maybe Ohio State got wind that Dusty May was going to go in a different direction. Either way, the point was, that is 11 days for 4 jobs to get filled, all keying off one decision. And in particular, if you think about it, I think FAU's season ended, on a Friday. By the following Thursday, 3 jobs that had all been connected to Dusty May had all filled. That is how quickly it's going to move. And Indiana is going to be the program that in all likelihood sets that pace. So it is not, it is not something where I expect Indiana to have to really move at somebody else's timeline. But I do think that Indiana, I suspect Indiana will enter the NCAA tournament with a plan of action for what to do and how to move once target number one is out of the tournament and therefore available.
And we don't know. That's the one thing we do not know is who target number one is. We all have speculated and I'm not really speculating on who target number one is because I'll tell you straight up, I don't know. There's too many couple of good options there at the top. But one of those that some people love, some people hate, Ben McCollum. He's also going to be coveted by Iowa if they make a move, which they are likely to do, but not for sure. But if they do, that could impact this only because he's from Iowa. There's a strong possibility he might want to go to Iowa instead of come to Indiana.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, that's kind of what the search firm is for, is to be able to say, either A, we've talked to McCollum's representation. The Iowa stuff's overblown. He thinks Indiana's. Just in this hypothetical,
Right.
You and I are not saying it's going to be Ben McCollum, but the Iowa stuff's overblown. He thinks Indiana's a better opportunity. He wants to have the conversation, evaluate the program. Any coach is going to look at the roster, is going to look at the resources, is going to look at the 3 to 5 year outlook and make sure that they're comfortable. You don't dive into a new job when you have some leverage in your old job. You don't dive into a new job just completely blind. But then at the end of that process through the firm, it can be kind of confirmed. Yes, he wants the job. Once the season ends, the contract can move fast. We can get him on a private jet. He's landing at Monroe County Airport, waving to people on the tarmac, and it's all again happening in a very, very quickly. Or the search firm can find the other thing, which is, hey, actually, it does seem like Iowa's going to open. Although I know Fran McCaffrey said Thursday night that he expects to be back next year. We shall see. But the search firm can, talk to, again, representatives, lawyers, agents, whoever, and say, hey, actually, Iowa's probably going to open. If it does, he grew up an Iowa fan. He was born in Iowa City. That job has always just been a special job. He's going to go there instead. And then Indiana can move on without ever having, publicly courted and failed in publicly courting Ben McCollum. Indiana can just move that. Whenever this is why every AD says, I only ever sat down with one candidate. I only interviewed one candidate. And it's because everything was conducted through third-party negotiations for the purposes of plausible deniability, so that when coach walks into room with athletic director and university president or chancellor or whoever, and everybody sits down, all the really relevant stuff that might hang up a hire has been dealt with, has been solved or pushed off the table or just otherwise resolved. And by the time you get to that point, it would take an awful lot to break down the potential for a hire. So my point is, yes, Iowa could affect McCollum's thinking if Indiana wanted to make him choice number one, but he actually favored the Iowa job. But having said that, that is the sort of thing that would play out privately. And then, maybe in 2 or 3 years, somebody'd be writing a story and just casually say, oh, and he considered the Indiana job, but Iowa was home, like something like that. But like in the here and now, one of the reasons you retain the search firm is so that all that can happen behind the scenes. So a coach is never publicly rejected by a program, and a program's never publicly rejected by a coach.
Absolutely. And another question is it possible that it ends up being somebody that we're not talking about? I mean, the likelihood is there. I don't know how likely it actually is that that could be kept under wraps, and then no one else would think about it, but I'm sure it's a possibility.
I mean, I absolutely think, I think it's absolutely a possibility. I think, that sort of theory has kind of followed this search pretty much since its inception. And I think the primary reason why is because Indiana's done a really good job of keeping its circle tight. I have heard pretty reliably, if admittedly secondhand, that moneyed boosters aren't being kept in the loop for the most part. The former players, can't get that is how kind of tight Scott Dolson is keeping the circle of trust at the moment. That, even some of the people you would expect him to share at least some details of this search with, he's just not. And I think he's, he deserves credit for that. And, listen, so a lot of the time, I think when there's that noise vacuum, people rush to fill it. When there's that information vacuum, people rush to fill it. And I think one of the things that has maybe filled it, quote unquote, is this perception that maybe that means that Dolson's keeping it close to the vest because, you know, all of this is a smokescreen and he's got another mystery candidate over here that he wants to hire that nobody's thinking about. And that does happen like that. You know, let's not, and that doesn't mean that mystery candidate is Brad Stevens, you know, but let's say it's just like a sitting head coach somewhere that nobody thinks is unhappy in his current job that you'd look at and say, oh, we're not even going to consider him because there's no way he'd leave the job he's in. But actually, through back channels, through search firm, through whatever, he's expressed interest in that conversations. You know, those conversations have been had, and Indiana has reciprocated, and that process is being kept, you know, tightly guarded so it doesn't get out. What's equally possible, if not maybe more so, is just the reality that, you know, the possibility that essentially because Dolson is doing a good job of keeping the search quiet, people are filling the information vacuum with rumors that are taking hold. Because listen, it's kind of exciting, right? Like it's, you know, it's exciting to, you know, I mean, there's a reason why on the game show sometimes you pick what's behind the mystery door. It's because that's exciting. You don't know what's there. Maybe it's better, maybe it's worse, but it is just human nature to sort of wonder about what you don't know, what, you know, like the unknown and the possibility of the unknown, the risk, but also the reward. And I think that what's probably more likely when you hear these rumors about like a mystery candidate is that that's more just reflective of kind of people filling the information vacuum and that sort of taking hold and spreading roots, even though maybe there's not much behind it.
Yeah, the only time we're going to know for sure is when Scott Dolson makes that announcement. And
right.
And like I said, he has done a marvelous job keeping it under wraps. And
if memory serves, in 2006, no one saw Kelvin Sampson coming. And I was a sophomore in college. I don't remember. No, I was a freshman in college, so I don't remember that like you know, vividly. But if memory serves, it was a lot of talk of Tom Crean, John Beeline, and Steve Alford, and no one really saw Sampson coming. So like, you know, that kind of high. It's that kind of hire essentially.
Probably didn't see Sampson coming because he just got caught cheating in Oklahoma. They didn't expect it. No. So now where does your attention turn? Obviously, with the season most likely over, the coaching search is the focal point for everything, I would assume, even for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll probably be back up at the Big Ten tournament at some point this weekend. And then there's, you know, there's regional games in Indy this year, which is always kind of fun to cover. It's always fun to get out. Like it's, you know, when you work a beat, you're not cheering for the team that you cover, but your fortunes, your attentions, your sort of professional energy is all focused on whatever happens or doesn't happen on your beat. It's always kind of fun to detach from that a little bit and just go look for a good story. You know, just wander into a locker room that you've never met anybody before and, you know, just kind of find something interesting, find something compelling and, you know, write the heck out of that as best you can for a weekend. So I'll probably be up there, but no, a lot of it is just going to be the search and it's probably going to resolve itself. Again, I would suggest pretty quickly unless something goes wrong.
I would agree. Zach Osterman, beat writer for the IU beat writer for the Indy Star. Be a subscriber. Keep local papers alive. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you, brother. I'm sure I'll see you back up in Indy.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Jim.
Thank you, Zach. Zach Osterman joined us here on Indiana Sportsbeat Radio. And continuing on, since we don't have to take breaks today, goofy son of a bitch number 3. Alec Lasley. No, I'm just messing. I've been screwing with most people because the show's not on radio today because of the NCAA games. And I could cuss if I wanted to, but I'm not going to. Just trying to mess with people. I didn't get a very good reaction out of you.
Yeah, because you already told me that you were going to do it yesterday.
I thought I did. I was like, did I tell him that yesterday? I did get Todd Leary. He had a pretty good expression on his face. But then as you heard, the biggest thing, of course, talking about the coaching search. Indiana is, I don't think there's any question they're out of the tournament. There are too many late they're not necessarily bid stealers, but I guess they are bid stealers. They're kind of knocking Indiana down a little bit further. I didn't really expect that to happen. I thought that they would grab the last spot in, but it looks like they may be the first team out. Either way, I don't think they can work their way back in. When you're there, you're usually there. So, but that's how that goes. And it actually gives fans just the ability to focus on the coaching search. Not that they needed any more impetus to do that. But it'll actually, I wonder if it turns up the heat on fans just salivating for information, because there won't be games to look forward to.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting. I mean, obviously, I think everyone going into yesterday's game, right, was in the full, expectation that kind of regardless of what happens, they should have done enough over the last, kind of month and a half to 2 months to get into the NCAA tournament. But obviously, as everyone knows, a win would have solidified that. Not only pushing them out of going to Dayton, but more so just solidifying their spot in the entire tournament field. But yeah, yesterday was not a great day for Indiana, even after the loss, right? I mean, Texas beat Texas A&M. You did get some help with Xavier losing to Marquette, but obviously North Carolina won again. You had Boise State win, and Utah State won as well. So there were a lot of different potential outcomes that would have theoretically helped Indiana stay kind of on the right side of that bubble that obviously didn't go their way. So now it's more than likely that, if they do make the field, right, if they're probably that last spot in, and you're more than likely looking at over the next few days, probably a few other bid stealers. So like you said, it's not a fun, next few days for Indiana, but that means that, potentially we're getting closer to that new head coach, the new era of Indiana basketball, and kind of the changing of the guard, which I think a lot of people are excited for, right? I mean, I think the last month, really got the excitement back into the program for a lot of different reasons. I think the fans wore as much of that weight of not knowing what was going to happen as the players and the coaches did, in terms of what was going to happen with Mike Woodson. So I think once that happened, everyone kind of jumped back on the same page and had the common goal of, okay, let's just send Mike Woodson out on a good note. Let's get back to the NCAA tournament. Let's kind of do whatever we can to get a fun final 2 months out of this season. And for the most part, right, they did. It's unfortunate how it happened, but I think fans are now excited about this next chapter, regardless of what happens. And I don't know if you've talked about it yet today, but I don't think Indiana is at all going to be playing in any postseason tournament, regardless of if it's the NCAA or not. That makes absolutely no sense to me, especially with where they're at and the current landscape of college basketball.
We did talk about that, and it's good to bring it back up, though. But before I get to that, Philip pointing out, backwards hat, bad sign. I was going to ask, are you Bill or Ted in your excellent adventure?
Bill.
I never saw that movie. It's all I thought of. That's what I thought about when he first came on. Alec Lasley joining us here on the program. Yeah, I asked that very question mainly because of the Crown Tournament. It's new, and it's ran by Fox specifically for the Big 10, Big East, and Big 12 conferences. There's an agreement. Teams are supposed to play if they're available. Now, Zach said the same thing that I'm thinking. I think that at worst case, they're like, yeah, we don't want to play in this year, please, because of what our situation is. And I don't think the Big Ten is going to force their hand. It would do good for anybody. So I agree with you. I think their season is over, period.
Well, and it the Crown's an interesting, and I'm not sure. I mean, they're probably going to have to keep it this way moving forward. But right, obviously, the first year having this event, it's going to be kind of a lot of push and pull moving forward to see kind of how this stays intact moving into next year and then the year after that if they do keep it around. But it starts after the transfer portal opens up. So it in my mind, it's very weird how the timing of everything that really works with this tournament, right? Because the The portal opens up right the 24th or 25th, and the Crown doesn't start until the 31st. So, a lot of teams that are kind of in flux, right? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense for a lot of these players potentially to play in this event if they know they're already going to go into the portal, and they know within 24 to 48 hours of teams losing in the NCAA tournament, or of even teams losing in the NIT or the Crown at this point, are probably already going to know where they're going to end up next year, and then that sets you back, right? If you're going into the Final Four weekend there, which would be I guess that's the championship looks like it's April 6th for the Crown, right? So that's after the Final Four is over. That's after those teams potentially have some openings that are now already being filled. It limits where you're going to be able to go. So the timing with this event doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So it's going to be interesting to see how teams really kind of maneuver the different timelines of the portal with this event, especially because it does interfere with a lot of different things, especially with the team that's going through obviously a new coaching search.
Yeah, and I don't see that changing, but Indiana has got some choices to make. I can't decide what I think is going to happen. I really can't. I'm like, all right, is it going to be Ben McCollum? There's a lot of positives to him. Some people don't like him because of the pace of play and all of that. Is it going to be Mick Cronin, who is more proven of a coach, or Chris Collins, kind of a name a little bit off the radar? Brownell, a little off the radar. There are still several names that it's not like you've got it down to this 2 or 3 guys. There are multiple, and I don't think that it would be turned down by any of those guys, but you wouldn't think Kentucky would get turned down, but they got turned down by Scott Drew, so it wasn't. So we'll have to watch this process play out, but it happens quick no matter what. I said earlier that Scott is very far along right now. He has to be close to being ready to either pull in the trigger, or they're ready to go as soon as the coach of the team of the coach loses.
Yeah, and I mean, even going back to the Curt Cignetti hire, I mean, that was a name that not a lot of people were really looking at for 99% of that coaching search, and then all of a sudden his name kind of pops up, and I think maybe 24 hours later it was announced that he was going to be the new head coach, right? So Scott Dolson knows what he's doing. He knows how to conduct a really thorough coaching search, and right, you haven't heard a lot of major leaks that have come out, right? Every once in a while you're going to hear some names pop up, more so because of agents wanting to push agendas and stuff like that nowadays. But for the most part, it's going to be a pretty cut and dry process. I think, going into this year, you'd be naive to think that Scott Dolson didn't already have 3, 4, 5 names on, his kind of hot list there of who he was going to go after if things went sour kind of mid-year, which they obviously did. So this is not, he was never playing from kind of a reactionary point of view. He was always pretty proactive in this sense. And I think going through the coaching search so recently that he did with Curt Cignetti, I think allowed him to really kind of figure out what was going to work, what wasn't going to work, and exactly what he wanted to match up with in terms of kind of values, morals, and specifically, X's and O's, and how this coach was now going to navigate through, the new era of college basketball, right? I mean, when Mike Woodson took over, it was definitely a new era of college basketball. But over the last 4 years, and then more specifically, right, the last year or two, the NILs changed even more drastically. The transfer portals changed more drastically, right? So you need a coach who can come in and shift things and change things right away on day one. We obviously saw that with Curt Cignetti. You saw that, more specifically, right, with Pat Kelsey, Mark Pope, guys who not only have a good core group that they can bring with them, but also have a lot of connections elsewhere where they can go out and already know pretty much there's 2 or 3 guys from, X school or X school that I have a pretty good chance of landing once the portal opens up. And you need coaches to be able to think that way. And obviously, it's going to be interesting to see exactly what happens. I don't know how sold I am on Ben McCollum at this point. It's a vastly different. Not to knock anything on the Division II level, right? It's not what I'm going to do, but because those guys who coach there and play there are phenomenally talented. It's a much different level to go from D2 to a mid-major than it is from D2 to a mid-major, then to a Power Four conference. Not only the Big Ten, but a program like Indiana within a 2-year time frame. This is not like Ben McCollum's been on the mid-major level for 10 years or for 5 years like Curt Cignetti was, consistently pumping out, winning seasons, right? I mean, obviously you have the connections, and I think that's what everyone really wants to hold on to is, this truly is the Curt Cignetti of college basketball. He very well could be, right? That he could be the next generational type coach who's going to come in and shift things right away. But I just think you need someone who it has proven it time and time again at this level. And not to say that Brad Brownell's done that, but to see what he's done in the past 2 years with the new era of NIL and the new era of the transfer portal, that's pretty dang good. And to do that in a conference where you consistently have North Carolina and Duke at the top of the echelon when it comes to the transfer portal and NIL, and having the top talent year in and year out, that's very difficult to do, to finish 2 or 3 in the ACC, albeit obviously a much down year this year. But to go in, win 18 games on the tail end of making it to an Elite Eight last year, and a team that is better than it was last year at this point in the season, gearing up for a deep tournament run, obviously has some state of Indiana ties, right? Not specifically to the IU program itself, obviously has connections with Calvert Cheney, but, outside of that, I don't think this needs to be a hire that, is within the Indiana program, within the Indiana, family per se. I think that's where you can get really, really pigeonholed into a lot of, murky waters, which now we've seen with Mike Woodson. But I think there needs to be somewhat of a connection to the state of Indiana in some capacity. So, right, he checks off that box. He's won now. He's been through the ringer, albeit at Clemson, right? Not the type of level that Indiana has, but let's be frank, he's been on the hot seat almost every single year with Clemson, and he's been able to at least get these guys to come back, buy into the program, and do a phenomenal job in the transfer portal over the last 2 years. So if I'm looking at anyone, he's kind of my guy that I would want if it comes down to both him and Ben McCollum. We'll see which route they want to go, but I think Brad Brownell's a very good coach. I don't think he gets the recognition that he deserves, playing in typically what has been a much more powerful ACC conference. And he's now been able to navigate through 2 very successful and challenging seasons with the new era of NIL and the transfer portal.
And let's be honest, playing in the shadow of Duke, North Carolina, Virginia, who have all won national championships within the last decade. So that is a tough thing to do. And I agree with you. The Indiana connections he has, not to the state rather, gives him inroads to recruiting, because he's brought guys down to Clemson from Indiana that were overlooked by Indiana and some other programs. But I have no issue with him either. A lot of people are hung up on the fact that he didn't do a lot for quite a while, but you listed the reasons that suffice to me. And I think he is doing well, and his success has come here of late. So that shows someone that can adjust and move with the times and make that. There are plenty of people that have fallen off. There are people that have retired because they could not make that adjustment. So I think that is very, very telling of him and his abilities. And I think that he would be a good selection. I think that him, Chris Collins, both would be good. Who else? I think Grant McCaslin would do a good job. He does little to no connections. He'd be kind of further outside, removed, but it's just going to be interesting to see who it is. But I would not be surprised if it doesn't come from Brownell, Collins, or Cronin, or McCollum.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Mick Cronin, when we started this, right, the 2 on the top of my list were Mick Cronin and Scott Drew. that I would have targeted and gone after with every second of the time of day that I had. Obviously, two coaches that for whatever reason may or may not have come. Scott Drew was probably more of the outlier there in terms of the more longer shot. I thought this would have been probably the best chance that you would have had with him. It was kind of going on a trajectory of what John Calipari had at Kentucky, where we're doing really well, but after kind of that national championship that Baylor had, leveled off a little bit and haven't seen the exact success that I think he had sustained for such a long period of time. And then obviously had a very difficult season this year in the Big 12. But Mick Cronin, I think, it doesn't sound like he's probably going to end up coming for whatever reason that may be. But I still think he would have been a phenomenal coach. I mean, he wins. He's now shown that he can do it with very little NIL support out at UCLA, and he's been able to do a very good job at not only recruiting, where he gets consistent top talent who can come in from day one, but he also knows how to kind of navigate through the international waters, get some really good international kids who come in and are able to be program players for multiple years. And has obviously been able to kind of sustain a little bit of that through the transfer portal. But one interesting thing is it's going to be, I think, very interesting to see what happens with Iowa, right? I mean, Fran McCaffrey wants to come back.
I was just getting ready to bring that up only because can you imagine if Iowa went from Fran McCaffrey to Ben McCollum?
Yeah.
You want to talk about a 180 in styles of play.
Yeah. And for obviously people may know, people may not know, but he's from Iowa City. He's from Iowa. He has those connections there, right? I mean, if you're looking to go take kind of your first high major job, Power 4 level job, what kind of better way to do that than theoretically going home for it? Who knows what happens? It seems to be that Fran wants to come back, but a lot of people are unsure if that's just him wanting to come back and not actually going to be able to return. So that's kind of the one outlier there. We'll see what happens. I think if it comes down to Indiana and Iowa, I'd be hard pressed to say that he goes Indiana's route, but who knows? I mean, that's obviously a conversation that if that were the case, it's going to be probably difficult for a lot of Indiana fans to deal with if they lose a coach to Iowa, regardless of his connections there. But that's the one X factor that I think a lot of people still have to pay attention to over the next couple of weeks.
So, if judging from the conversation, would I be correct in surmising that your top candidate, if you were making the selection, would probably be Brad Brownell at this point?
Yeah,
and I would think I'd be fine with that. But the funny thing is, it doesn't matter who it's going to be. There are going to be a faction of fans that are just pissed off because they want this guy. The beard thing, people are. I've been saying it for 2 weeks now. You got to get over it. It's not happening. Chris Beard is not happening. And just stop complaining about it. Stop trying to sell people on it. It's that ship has sailed, and just let it go. Just wave by from the harbor, and we'll see. Now the interesting becomes the timeline. When can this happen? And with Clemson, they're going to be in the NCAA tournament. Had a fantastic year, although a very, very watered down ACC this year. But what a fantastic year! They're one of the only teams that beat Duke with Cooper Flag.
No, I mean they beat Duke, right? They beat Kentucky. They've had still some good performances in the non-conference regardless. They had a tough loss to Boise State, I believe. So still a tournament team, but they had some shaky performances throughout the first half of the year, but then have really come on strong as of late. And I think won like 10, maybe 11 in a row here to finish off the season. Play hard, play really, really phenomenal basketball, in my opinion, led by a lot of upperclassmen, which is always good, especially this time of year, guys who obviously returned from last year's team. But that's going to be the timeline, right? I mean, obviously, I think you look at Clemson versus Drake, and you probably see a Drake team that gets out a little bit earlier than Clemson does. So if you tell me in 2 weeks Indiana has a coach, it's probably going to be Ben McCollum. If you say that, Indiana doesn't have a coach until the first week of April, that's probably, a sign that it's going to be Brad Brownell or, someone else that, maybe potentially not even on the radar at this point in terms of, an outward radar when it comes to that. But I see some comments about, Will Wade over here on the side. I think, look, I doubt he's on the list there. I think you're going to look at anyone. He's probably that one outlier who could potentially do it. I just don't think that Indiana will.
He's on the Chris Beard list.
Well,
it's a different list, but
yes.
It's a different list, but he's on that X'd out list is what I call it.
I mean, I would
name written down with a line through him.
I would talk to Will Wade, and I would hire Will Wade a million years before I would even talk to Chris Beard. So that's a different scenario there. But yeah, I mean that's where you're looking at, right? There's two different timelines. If this is a super quick hire, it's going to be someone out of the NCAA tournament pretty early on. And if this goes and extends a little bit, that's where you probably get the Brad Brownells, or maybe it is a Creighton. If Greg McDermott, it kind of sneaks in there as a potential name that I know a lot of people have kind of floated out there as well. His top assistant just took a job elsewhere, so there could be some shakeup in the staff regardless. So maybe a time that he looks to go elsewhere. But yeah, I think like I said, Brad Brownell is my top choice, and then outside of that, I mean, I think it's probably I personally would go McDermott before I would go McCollum, and then probably McCollum at that point, if those are the three that are legitimate options.
Well, we shall see, man. We shall see, and the drama will continue next week as the Big Ten tournament comes to a close on Sunday. The NCAA pairings announced then as well. Indiana not expected to be in that. It would be shocking, as a matter of fact, for Indiana to be named in the NCAA tournament. So we'll catch up with that. But brother, great to have you back on. Looking forward to it. You'll be seeing Alec very frequently. Especially, starting now, really. But we've got an announcement to make here in a couple of weeks, so looking forward to that. Glad to have you, brother. Glad to see you.
I appreciate it, Jim. Have a good one.
You too, buddy. Enjoy their weekend. Maybe you don't have to work quite as hard now that Indiana lost.
Always working.
There you go. Love it. Man, that is going to wrap it up for us. We appreciate you joining us on a little shortened show today. Don't have to go out to the radio stations, which is a blessing because of the NCAA the conference games now, but it'll be the same for next Thursday and Friday. Looking forward to that because it's a little break. So looking forward to that, and grateful to have you guys on as always. And we'll be back on Monday to do this again. Until then, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sportsbeat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sportsbeat Radio.